Hello everyone, it is I, the Witch of Paint. This week we are going to do something for a friend of mine again. She has written a book and I thought it would be fun if I was to paint her a book cover. I don't know if it's going to be published. My sister and I are both trying to get her to do it, but so far I think it's still in the editing process, so it doesn't really matter. And I haven't really read any of the book as of yet, so we'll see. All I had to work with for this cover was the idea that she already had in mind for it, which was that there was a golden flower edge kind of thing around it, like a frame almost. The background was supposed to be a sort of dark shade of purple, and the two main characters were supposed to be in the front as silhouettes, and there were butterflies as well involved in this. One of the silhouettes of the girls was supposed to be a medieval looking princess from a fantasy world, so it was just like slightly inspired by medieval. I think, I'm not entirely sure, like I said, I haven't read the book yet. And the other girl is supposed to come from modern day. And in this video I will play around with some concepts, and in the end I digitally edit the one I liked best because I wanted to see for myself if I had areas where I needed to improve some things. Which I did find some areas where I would improve some things. But let's not jump ahead. So after making some thumbnail sketches, which you've already seen now, I started two separate pieces of A5 paintings. The first of them I simply have lying flat on my desk, but for the second I thought it would be fun to mess around with my new table easel and see what kind of fun painting flows I could get from that. But for that I obviously had to figure out a new camera angle, and I think I did kind of find one, although towards the end I get a little too lazy to kind of change my camera angle. Doesn't really matter. All the colours I use for both paintings, or like for all the paintings that I do traditionally in this video, are from my Van Gogh watercolour palette. For both of these paintings I started by putting permanent lemon yellow around the edges and then permanent blue violet in the middle of the painting, so that I do have my two base colours that I'm going to have to be working with down already. Of course, with the easel the paint is going to be flowing down, so it's going to be looking different to the one that I've just got lying on the table. But that was the whole point for me, to experiment a little bit. I didn't want to do a gradient with these colours since they are complementary colours, so if I mix them I'm going to get some really ugly looking muddy colours. It did still happen in some areas, but I try to avoid it for the most part. These two paintings that I am doing right now are not for a final result, so to speak. They are just for me to see what I like for a cover, what I don't like, and how I want to keep working on it, so what I want to build on in the next versions of this. Given the ideas that I have gotten, I have been encouraged to be a little creative, but I did kind of still want to work with the boundaries, like make sure that there's flowers or vines around the edge as a frame, and in the middle, the purple background, the black silhouettes, butterflies. Basically, I wanted to stick to the prompts that she set as closely as I possibly could. For the first painting, I decided to really go into that flower idea, so I first put down the blobs of yellow and purple, and also tried to put a little bit of purple into the yellow because I didn't want them to be all like just separated. I wanted them to kind of interact a little bit with each other at the very least, so that you could get a little bit of sense of depth, which I kind of struggled with for all of this a little bit, but anyways. For the painting on the easel, I decided to go with a vine kind of look. So I was thinking, because obviously it was tilted, so the paint was going to be flowing down naturally. I thought I could use that as a sort of basis for some vines hanging down from the top, and also have like some bushes and shrubs down towards the bottom, although I don't go completely towards the middle in the bottom half of the painting, so it's not really a closed frame in the end. But I thought maybe it would be interesting to do that and give the silhouettes a little bit more space in the overall cover, and then to try and keep the focus on said silhouettes, I decided I wasn't going to define the vines or leaves or anything like that as much as I was going to with the other one, just to see if less or more detail was appropriate here, and essentially use that as a guideline for the next versions of this painting. But we're not there yet. As I've said, on the painting I had kept flat, I decided to lean more into the flower idea of the cover. So after the blobs have been dried, I tried to give the blobs some shape and added some flowers and also some ranking vines with leaves, so like kind of tying both vines and flowers. She'd said she wanted either, and I thought, why not both, you know? So I've got that sort of going down and around, and yeah, it wasn't really all that close to what my friend had gotten. I think it was with an AI, but I didn't want to copy the bot, obviously, because the bot kind of had a very fancy edge. And I mean, in a sense, this could be fancy as well, but it was more of a fancy, lacy kind of edge that didn't draw that much attention as my flowers. I instead wanted to use this opportunity to mess around a little, have some fun with the design and the ideas that she had generally wanted for the cover, and pretend I kind of don't know what the AI image looked like, if you get what I mean. Now, mind you, I am no book cover artist, but I love reading books, and she already had a pretty clear idea for what she wanted as elements of a cover, so I kind of already had all the bases of what I needed to work with it, in a sense, as an artist. For the darker shades of both covers, I stuck to Indian yellows and yellow medium, only occasionally mixing in some permanent red light to get some of those really, really dark shades in the flowers, and to also add a little bit of detail. I didn't really use a particularly clear guideline for where the light was coming from, but rather went with my gut feeling to shade the plants in. In the end, this was not supposed to be the actual cover after all. This was just to see what I liked and thought would fit best. So once the general outside of the painting was done, I sketched the silhouettes of the two girls as well as the butterflies on top of the painting behind the yellow plants. These sketches are then filled in with some Payne's grey, and I have to admit, when it comes to side profile human beings, I start struggling quickly. Even with a sketch, I end up not being all that happy with the way some of the silhouettes turned out in the end. Same goes for the butterflies. Without a reference, I had barely any clue as to where the butterflies were supposed to go, what their wings should be shaped like, what they look like when flying. But again, these two paintings were just test covers to see what worked and what sort of composition I liked. Both silhouettes also got a second layer of a darker mix of Payne's grey, just because I wanted them to look more black rather than that dark purple I was getting. By this point, I already knew which of the paintings I liked more and wanted to develop further, which was the one with all the plants that had way more detail in it than the one with the vines. It gave me kind of magical secret garden kind of vibes, and I do like a magical secret garden vibe. So for the next two paintings, which have been started like 2 minutes ago, I decided to sketch out the one with the flowers and vines before I painted it. The second painting that I'm doing, I decided not to sketch first. I just went in with that one. I don't know. I feel like maybe I should have given that a sketch as well, just to give it more something. I also added some flowers with that one later on, but I feel like I could have gotten a very fun and interesting cover out of the other one as well if I had bothered to sketch it out as well. In the end, I just kind of went into it without a sketch. And with the paint flowing down, I kind of felt like in the background of the purple, I could add something that looked like perhaps tree trunks of some sort, but I don't exactly push that idea as far as I could have. I just vaguely add in something that might be interpreted as tree trunks. Also, if you're wondering, you know, as I've said, I didn't put the camera back into the position where you can clearly see me working on the easel. I didn't feel like moving the camera again. Sorry, but I do take it off after that one time, so don't worry, you get to see what I do with the rest of it properly afterwards. For the one that I had sketched out first, I obviously erased the sketch and then started out by adding a wet and wet layer, which I think in the end was a little bit of a mistake, because you can see that some of the colours do start mixing in that one, in the wet and wet layer, and that resulted in some dark areas. I also didn't really pay attention to where the purple was going exactly. I should have maybe just done a layer of yellow first, done all the plants, then add in the purple in the gaps. That should have been the way I should have gone with this, but I didn't, because, I don't know, weird logic. I don't know, everything got a little bit muddy in some areas, and that bothered me a little bit, and I tried to fix it by adding some Chinese white over the top. No, it was opaque white, not Chinese white, sorry. But in the end, it ended up looking really muddy, and that's one of the things that I tried to fix the most when I was doing the digital version later on. Anyways, I do try to make the plants more detailed and less translucent than they were at the start, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to make this work. There are some parts where I do add in some more purple in the gaps between the plants afterwards, but I don't completely darken all the areas of purple underneath the plants, which I think I should have done as a kind of shadow, or maybe I could add shadowy plants behind them next time. I'm having random ideas with this cover. As you can see, I'm not quite done with this yet, even though by the end of this video I have something that looks pretty good, in my opinion. But anyway, we'll get to that later. So, once the gaps between the plants are filled in, I tried to darken the middle again by adding some darker purple paint, which I think was the permanent blue violet mixed with some indigo so that it was a little bit darker. I think. I don't remember for sure. It might have been just a more opaque mix of permanent blue violet. I don't remember for sure. But I did think that the middle was way too light, and so I wanted to add a little bit more contrast between the middle and the frame around it. It's a bit weird. And then I started adding in the silhouettes of the two girls. You may also notice that I do darken some of the gaps after all, but not all. Like I've said, I made a few weird decisions with these paintings. Maybe I was just a bit tired, I don't know. But in hindsight, I was making weird choices. And I kind of feel like I didn't get a particularly good balance between the contrasting colours. It was a little bit difficult anyway, because the yellow was so much brighter and lighter, and everything just kind of started muddying up. Not muddying up, but like, it's such a big contrast that your eyes drawn more towards the plants rather than the middle of the cover. It's a little, how do you put it? I don't know the word for it, but it just bothered me a little bit during the painting process. Also, I absolutely hated the silhouettes I painted for the second versions of this cover. I didn't like those silhouettes. They didn't look quite right. At least some of them. At least one of them turned out alright, but like the others, human faces are just difficult. For the other painting, I also just simply added some dark purple behind the vines that I had painted, because I thought, ooh, that could be cool. And I do still kind of like that vibe. I feel like I could mess around with that a little bit more in the future. Like I said, this video is not going to be the final result for the cover. It's basically going to be a sort of process video, so like you guys are coming along as I work through my ideas, and I'm using this whole video as well to reflect upon what I can do better with this cover to make it proper and good. Like, you could go into a bookshop and you would want to buy it. You know, that's essentially the job of a cover. I know people say, don't judge a book by its cover, but in a lot of cases, it's what we do, right? Right. So then, once everything has been painted and taken off the boards and everything, I decided I was going to take the 2 paintings with the flowers, scan them in, and see if I can edit them digitally, which is what you're going to see in a moment now. I don't do a lot of digital painting because, for one, it doesn't feel the same, but I also get very, 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 very perfectionist with digital painting, and the whole zooming into a drawing and then zooming back out and then seeing, ooh, that looks weird, that's just not for me, you know? But essentially what I did with this was lighten up some of the vines that had gotten too dark because I didn't pay attention to it, and I darkened the silhouettes as well. I put a little lighter area around the silhouettes in hopes of making them stand out a little bit more and not blend into the purple background. I added in the title of the book essentially as well in a font that I thought would look nice, and she has approved it, like my friend has approved it, so it's fine. But for now, this is what we've got as a kind of final result, but also not really. I'm just going to carry it over like this. The final result that has resulted from the 4 previous paintings and what I've got now is essentially going to be something that I will look at to see what I'm going to try to improve for the next version of this cover. So I will paint this again with watercolors. I'm not going to mix it with digital art all that much because I do want to send this to her because she's living a little bit far away from me. So I do want to send this to her eventually. So I'm going to make a physical version of this with watercolors, which I also think is a little bit more lively than digital painting. In my opinion, don't mean to offend any digital artists out there, you guys are great. But in any case, this is the end of the video now, and if you guys enjoyed it, you know, don't forget to like, comment something about books, maybe your favourite books. My favourite book series has been Percy Jackson for a long time, for example. I don't know, let's get the conversation going. There's obviously loads of books out there, and I do want to find something new to read, so maybe, you know. Anyway, you can also subscribe and check out my socials down below, and for the time being, I am the Witch of Paint, and I shall see you all next Sunday. Bye! Oh, look who's ended up at the end of the video. Well done, first of all. I bet you're here for the outtakes. Well, I'm not gonna hold you up any longer. Have fun! Which I did find a couple areas where it would improve. So like make things look like vines hanging from the top of it, and maybe some bushes. Shum. Shum. For the darker shades of both the colours, covers, not colours. But in any case, this is the end of the video now, and hello tractor. Wow, getting an outtake right at the end.